Hello, everybody. I'm not sure what name I'm being broadcast under, but whatevs, it's cool. This is going to be different from what I've been doing, which is a series of sorry, real professional, a series of autobiographies, and there's plenty more about that. But I'm going to take a break from that and do what seems to get the most reaction is to talk about stuff that everybody already has talked about a lot. But I'm going to try to give a different take on it that I haven't heard yet. Okay. Now, somebody asked, there was a woman, I believe the situation was she was trying to become a judge, and people from the public were asking her, or the press, they were asking her questions. Fair enough. And so one of them asked her, "What is a woman?" And she said something to the effect of, "I don't know. I'm not a biologist." And ever since then, that line has become a meme, mostly by the right, because they're the ones that really want things to be definite and concrete, even though sometimes they're not. So a lot of right wingers say, "What is a woman?" And to them, the answer is really obvious. But we'll get there. So, first of all, I would have said, if I had thought of it, I don't know what I would have said, something stupid probably, but if I had thought of it, I would have said, why are you asking me to define words? Don't you have access to an online dictionary? If you want to know what a word means, look it up. That's not really her job. And so that's what I would have said. So that's the angle I want to go at it from first. Okay, I'm not a linguist. I did get a BA in English. I did take a class in linguistics, but I'm really kind of fascinated by words, what they mean, what people use them to mean, what their origins are. So the thing is, when people ask a question like "What is a woman?" and debate, they think that they are debating the nature of the nature of objective reality, the ontological womanness, like an abstract noun, womanness. There's pure womanness, like Plato said, that exists in a realm all by itself, and we just have to figure out what that is. But that is not how language works. How language works is that words mean what people use them to mean. So a particular sound, such as woman, has no metaphysical meaning. You know, if you go to somewhere where they don't know English and you say it, good odds they won't know what you're talking about. Now, what is the origin of that word? That's interesting. It goes back to Old English, and it meant wife of man. So at the time, there was no such thing as a single woman, wife of man. You were the wife of a man, obviously. So there were no single women. However, of course, there were single women, but they called them something else. They called them maids or maidens, something like that. So that already shows that the meanings of words change over time. Now, the thing I said at the first, why don't you look at a dictionary? That's what people say. But then people still think there's an objective meaning for a word, and the dictionary will tell you what it is. But that's not true either. If it was true, we could go back to the same English dictionary from whatever, 1848, and just keep reprinting it, and it would still be just as accurate because words would still mean the same thing. But they don't. That's why they have to come up with a new one every year. So dictionaries are descriptive, not prescriptive. People put it out, and then all year long they have people that have to go around and figure out how the meanings of words have changed. For example, literally. When you say something is literally true, like it's not a metaphor, like I say, he was literally on fire. If I say, let's say I say, my phones are literally on fire, that means there's actually a fire, and I better figure out some way, if my phone's not connected, some way to notify the fire department because my phones are literally on fire. But then as long ago as the 80s, I think, people started using literally to mean figuratively, except it means a little more than that. It means figuratively, like a lot, like with a lot of emphasis on it. I guess that's what it means. So now the dictionary has two definitions. One is the old one, literally means, I don't know what else to call it, though. There's no new word to replace that means what the old word, to replace the old word, but literally means literally, and the second definition of literally is figuratively. Now, and that's in the dictionary. Now, as it happens, the same thing is happening with the word woman, because the only job of a dictionary creator is to report how people are using a word, because it has no innate meaning. So there are now in at least some dictionaries two meanings for women, for woman, for the word woman. One is biological, she was born with female genitals and then she reached adulthood. That's all we need to know. She reached adulthood. She's past puberty, or somewhere in there, puberty, adulthood, people fudge it a little. But that's basically it. She came of age, so now she is a woman. And if you weren't born with those female genitalias and that whole system, which was designed to kick in with estrogen and turn your body at a certain age into the body of an adult woman, well, you missed the boat. You can't be one. That's one definition. However, there is also a second definition, and that is, the first definition is, shall we say, trans-exclusive. Trans women do not fit that definition. They just don't. But there is a second definition that's trans-inclusive. I don't know exactly what it says, but basically it's what some people are using it. If they identify as a woman, if they play the social role of a woman, if they do things that are stereotypically in the culture they live in considered feminine things, feminine clothing, feminine behaviors to the best of their ability, then that can also be called a woman. So now the reason, this is something I learned in the 1980s in a women's studies class, but some people are a little late to the party. But this was what I was told. Sex refers to your biological sex. So that's the first definition. Born with female genitalia, reached adulthood, biologically a woman. But gender is socially constructed. As I said, identifies as a woman, behaves like, tries to look like one, behave like one, and so forth. Plays the social role of one. Okay, so sex is biological, gender is sociological. And no matter how many times you explain this, this is just what those words are used to mean. That's what the word definitions are, and that's it. No real argument there. But they will still conflate gender with sex. At this point, I think a lot of them are doing it intentionally. They're in bad faith. And they will say things like, there are only two genders, or they'll say things that are just nonsense, which, like, for example, my gender is an attack helicopter or something. That's just bad grammar. So, because inanimate objects generally don't have in some languages, they are given genders, and it's really random. The genders are not connected with them being perceived as feminine or masculine. It's just kind of random. But we're talking about English now. So, yes, the people who say that there's only two genders, that a woman is a biological construct, it is a biological phenomena that has nothing to do with sociology, are usually conservatives. We can argue about the so-called TERFs and where they are in the political, but by and large, they're political. I mean, they're left-leaning politically. So, I'm sorry, they are right-wing leaning politically. So these are conservatives. Sex is biological, it's not sociological. But they contradict themselves a lot, and they have for a long time, because I've seen these Quora questions. I go on Quora, and they'll say, what is a woman? A woman is born, blah, biological, blah, blah, blah. But then if you ask them, what is a man? You get completely different kinds of answers. You get things like, a man takes care of himself, of his family. A man works for a living. A man doesn't shy away from a fight. A man doesn't start a fight, but he can definitely finish one. And it goes on, those definitions of what it is to be a man are also changing in that sense. But there's still a lot of that terminology. The first time you have sex, you say, that woman made a man out of you, didn't she? She had sex with you for the first. She made a man out of you. Now you're a man. And then if you go back further, you get other things like Hemingway wrote a short story where he's leading a hunting trip, like he liked to big game hunting. And this guy shoots a lion, and his personality changes. Before he was what we now call a cuck. His wife fooled around on him, and he would tell her not to, but she didn't care. And so now he shoots a lion and he becomes a man. And now he behaves differently. He won't stand up. He's going to dump her or whatever. Except she actually kills him, which is accidentally or on purpose. She kills him. So that's that story. But Hemingway was very into what's manly men and what makes men manly and being a manly man. My father lived for a time in the in a Navy, in a veterans home for old soldiers, veterans. I think maybe it was just Navy or maybe it was all military. But a friend of mine was talking about somebody, and he said, he's not a man, or he's not much of a man. Has he ever been to a whorehouse? Has he ever had a child? Has he ever gone to war? And my stepfather, my real father, he said, well, this is what makes a man to him. This very, very particular set of criteria, you have not just one of the, don't just go to a massage parlor and then come back and say you're a man. No, there's all three of these things you got to do to be characterized as a man by him. Or, and also there were women whose husbands had been in the military and died. They were widows of a veteran, but they were allowed to live there too. And I asked my father, well, does the opposite ever happen? Does the widower of a female military member ever use that reasoning to live in the veterans home too? And he said, yeah, well, he could. And this conversation has come up, but they were saying he wouldn't be much of a man. So I think I've made my point by now. These same conservatives who, on the one hand, want everything to be biologically predetermined, they do speak, on the other hand, as if as if it's socially constructed, as if you don't get there just by having the male genitals and becoming an adult. You have to do certain things. You have to fill certain roles. You have to, dress a certain. You ask one of those men, is well, if a guy wore makeup and a dress, and let's say he had sex with other men and he played the submissive role, would you think that person was a man? They'd probably say, "Oh, hell no. That's not a man. That's a sissy. That's not a man at all. That's some kind of sissy." That's not. But then if you ask them, is a trans woman really a woman? They'll say, "No, she's not, because she was born," you get the drill. So they are not aware of the contradictions in their thinking. And so I don't know. I could belabor anything beyond that would be belaboring the point. So I think I will shut up for now. Thank you, everybody.